Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 196 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us. I wasn't here last week, so Mike, I believe, did the show with our guest of the week last week, and the Insider's Al Dawson. So big thanks to Al Dawson of the Insider for subbing in for me, I guess, and previewing and reviewing and talking all things boxing in last week's episode. But this week, a new guest. I believe he's been on once before, maybe twice, but at least once before. And right before we started recording this episode, we asked him how he would like to be introduced, just because he's been all over the game in the sport of boxing. And when I mean all over the game, I mean all over the game in terms of behind the scenes, management, public relations, media, and even as a professional fighter. He's actually been in the ring as a professional fighter, and I believe he's due to come back for a return sometime next year in 2023. Big friend of the show, Chris Glover, returns to the Last Round. Thank you again for joining us, Chris.
Thank you for having me, guys. Yeah, nice intro. I liked it. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Great to be back on.
The one-man band, Chris Glover, is here. So let's, for people who might not be completely familiar with you, Chris, give us a quick overview. Obviously I mentioned a couple of details behind that. You're kind of all over the business. You've had your hand in different aspects of the boxing world, including professionally fighting within the ring here in the United States. But kind of give our listeners who might not be familiar with you and your background a general overview of who you are.
Well, it's a big question. It deserves a big answer. But now for what I do day to day, I work for ProBox TV, which is the app over here that's newly formed, all things boxing. So that kind of really suits what I do. You do a bit of everything when from matchmaking to handling the fighters one-on-one. I have certain fighters within the who appeared on the network that I'll look after personally, going all the way through to doing a lot of their media relations. So we do the podcast with Roy Jones. I help produce that from a content standpoint of Roy Jones, Paulie Malignaggi, Manuel Marquez. So I do a lot of that, and then all the way to the UK. I'm still doing a lot in the UK. I'm doing a lot with Boxer at the moment in the UK. And obviously Sky Sports is, for me, the best platform to be on for any fighter in the UK, because you're getting the best exposure. So I'm doing all that. I used to do a lot of freelance PR. I don't do that as much anymore, simply just don't have the time. As I was delayed getting on here because I was going over a compelling list of who and why are the best prospects in the United States at the moment. So yeah, and then I used to help out fighters training them. It's not something I do as much anymore because just there's not enough hours in the day. But I've had 2 pro fights. Wasn't a great amateur, not a great pro, but got stuck in and had a go. Which is more than what most people can say. I've had first-hand experience. I've been in 11 world title camps, so that's invaluable knowledge that it's great to have it. I'm only 29, so it's great to have that experience that, I can utilise in certain different ways. So that's kind of me. From Liverpool, yeah. Spent a lot of time in Brooklyn, in New York, and still love that place. And now I'm in sunny South Florida.
So you're definitely a world traveler, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well travelled. Yeah, absolutely well travelled. I've been everywhere. I've been to with boxing. Boxing can be a great life. It's took me all over the world. To all over North America, to Dubai, to Spain, all over Europe, and it's Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales. I know it seems exotic to the Americans. It's not really if you're English, but it's boxing's given me a great life. I couldn't be happier.
That's great. That's great. Like we mentioned, you've experienced at different aspects of the sport, and at only 29 years old, and you still continue to do so. So obviously, there's still much ahead in your career. Let's jump right back into it to fight previews. This upcoming Saturday, the 8th of October, from the Newcastle Entertainment Center in Newcastle. Sam Eggington, 32-7, goes up against Dennis Hogan, 34-1. This is for the IBO Super Welterweight title. Chris, what's your take on Sam Eggington?
Well, another former employer of mine, the IBO. I used to work there. Good people. Sam Eggington, strong fighter, comes forward. He's a fun fighter. No disrespect to Sam, but if he keeps fighting the way he fights, he's going to be eating crayons when he's older. But he's an all action fighter. It's an interesting clash of styles because Sam's a come forward fighter, and on the other hand, you've got Dennis, who's a back-footed, slick fighter, who's a counterpuncher. So it's a really interesting clash of styles, I'd say. But it's down in Australia, and I think I can expect Sam to bring a really, really strong performance, a lot of output and a lot of output from a shot standpoint, and it'll be a fun fight.
So what, do you think Dennis Hogan, because obviously Dennis Hogan, a lot of the listeners might remember Dennis Hogan from his fight, I believe, against Jaime Munguia, right, Mike? So there was a lot of people who thought that Hogan probably deserved that win. I think that was in TJ down here, just in the tip of Mexico, right below California, Baja California over here. Do you think, you mentioned, you touched on Sam Eggington maybe should be more of a defensive fighter. His style is maybe to come forward because it might affect him later on. So do you think, is there any way that Dennis Hogan can take advantage of that aggressiveness?
And that's where Dennis Hogan, that's the problem with Dennis. Dennis Hogan isn't that big, like, believe it or not. Sam Eggington's probably going to be the bigger guy in there on the ring, on the night. Sorry, and I was at the Charlo fight, Dennis Hogan fight with Charlo. He's got really good timing and he can pick you off. And he was had some success with Charlo in the first few rounds. But then he just, Charlo was just too big, too strong. Sam Eggington ain't Charlo. So, the openings is, if you're going to throw shots, you're going to take shots, and that could really work in the advantage of Dennis Hogan.
Mike, what do you think about the matchup?
Yeah, like Chris said, Sam essentially started as a pro to be a journeyman. Yeah. Kind of a lot of the Brits know his story, and then now look at him, he's in there fighting for the IBO world title. So regardless of how he does, he's achieved more than he ever really dreamed of, I'd have thought. But yeah, I think, kind of Chris summed it up. It's stylistically, it's a good matchup for Hogan if he doesn't get caught. Because, Eggington only really has a plan A, doesn't really have a plan B, and he just kind of like comes forward, and that kind of really plays into the stylistic matchup for Dennis Hogan, where he can just kind of like, dance about on the outside. And really, you're looking at kind of a very similar performance to the Munguia performance, where he just kind of like boxes on the outside, just doesn't let, Eggington plant his feet and get stuck into the fight. He just kind of keeps twisting, turning, punch, get out of range, get back in range. That's the sort of matchup I see, unless Eggington manages to really, catch him, corner him, and put a bit of a beat down on him. But it's a good matchup. Stylistically, it's a good matchup. I think they're both very similar in terms of skill. I think every time they step up, both of them, tend to come off second best. Hogan's been in there with Tim Tszyu, Charlo, and Munguia over the last 3 years, and unfortunately came out, was beaten twice by TKO, by Tim Tszyu and Charlo, and was literally robbed, daylight robbery by Munguia down in Mexico.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you think? Assuming Eggington gets the victory here, where would you like to see him go next? Who would be an ideal opponent for you?
Who was that? Sorry, Munguia.
You'd want to see you'd want to see a rematch with Munguia?
I don't know if there's any real. Sorry about that. I don't know if there's any real, massive demand for that fight again. If I'm being honest, like with Jaime Munguia, I'd like to see Jaime Munguia step up. And really fight a champion now. I think that's kind of what he's got to do. He's just fought Jimmy Kelly, and Jimmy Kelly gave him hell for 4 rounds. He was just too small. So I don't really know what the play is with Munguia, because he's not really, he's got to go somewhere. He's got to really, really step up now. You can't be a prospect forever. And I'm not saying that Dennis Hogan and Jimmy Kelly are prospects, because they're not. You don't. You've got to be a good fighter to beat those type of fighters. But with Dennis Hogan, if he becomes the IBO world champion, there's a lot of fun fights out there at 54 for him. Whether that be in Australia or abroad. A fight with someone like Liam Smith wouldn't be a bad fight. For Dennis Hogan, or for either of them, to be honest. That's they never fought, and I think Jeff Horn's retired, but you've got to look down to Australian boxing for Dennis Hogan. He's mostly based down there now, so I still would have loved to seen him fight Spike O'Sullivan. That would have been a fun fight, fun build-up.
Mike, what do you think? Do you think Eggington has a chance to ever fight outside of the UK? Maybe, obviously, in the United States, or is he going to be? Is he one of those fighters that you have the feeling that he's going to be just a British level fighter for the entirety of his career?
He wins this. He's in there for a big payday, And I could see him fighting over here, against some names if he manages to beat Dennis Hogan, because he's highly ranked, and would be like a decent-ish level opponent for somebody. I could see him in there against someone like a Fundora, a Castano, because wow. he is highly ranked.
I was going to say Erickson Lubin, Mike. Sorry to cut you off, but Erickson Lubin, he needs a comeback fight, doesn't he, now? After taking a loss to Fundora. That's a perfect fight for him. And stylistically, it's a great fight, because they both come forward and they both throw a lot of punches.
Yeah, no, exactly. Anyone with a comeback fight, like a Lubin, Tony Harrison, somebody like that would be a good fight, because he's going to bring the fans. And like Chris said before, Eggington makes good TV, and that is why he's where he is, because for a fact that he's going to get in there, win, lose, or draw, and he's going to put it all on the line. And he's just really one of those fighters that's built for TV.
Am I the only one that wants to see Egg and Cheese again against Cheeseman, just for the marketing?
I'd love that fight. Has Cheeseman retired?
Is he? Is he retired?
I'm not 100%. Please don't quote me on. Well, someone's going to quote me on it, but I'm not 100% sure. But I'd love to see that fight again. That's just an absolute war. So
yeah,
I'd love to see that fight again.
Yeah, and then it markets itself. So Egg and Cheese right there. So
Egg and Cheese, yeah. That was Eddie in its absolute finest. That one.
Moving on to probably the topic of the week that many of our listeners want to hear our take on. As of this moment, I don't, at least as of this recording, we don't know yet if this fight is officially canceled and will not proceed forward. I guess they're still trying to, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing are still trying to figure out some moves behind the scenes, and there was talk of a court injunction and all that. So as of this recording, we don't have any concrete information, but we do know that Conor Benn tested positive for a or had an adverse finding for, I believe it's pronounced clomiphene. It's a substance on the World Anti-Doping Agency's banned list, which is normally used to treat infertility in women. So obviously Conor Benn was, I don't know what word you want to prefer to use, scheduled to fight Chris Eubank Jr. this upcoming Saturday over there in the UK. But now, because of this adverse finding with Conor Benn, there seems like a high chance that this fight will not proceed forward. Chris, when you heard the news today, because I believe it broke today, that Conor Benn had tested positive for this substance, what was your reaction?
It's hard to be surprised in boxing anymore. But, how he was moving up from 147 to 158 when, I don't know him. So I don't want to personally put the guy down and call him a drug cheat, but it's kind of, undeniable. If you fail a drug test, you're a drug cheat, whether you willingly or not took a substance. And that's something that people don't realise. I could never name them, but I know I've seen fighters put stuff being injected with stuff. Them fighters don't have a fucking clue what's getting put in this. They could think it's a B12 shot. They wouldn't have a clue. However, you look at the shape Conor Benn's in, you don't naturally move up in weight classes like that. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. is the brand. And, say what you want about him as a person, but Floyd grew up in weight naturally. You don't just become 130 one day and then next minute you're at 147 like Floyd was. It was a gradual process. And to see the shape that Ben was in, it's crazy to think how has he done that in, a couple of months. The body genetics don't work like that. That's not science and body comp. And then you proceed from that. This is a big thing that people don't understand. I think the British Boxing Board of Control state you can only be a certain amount over on the check weight on the Wednesday prior to the weigh-ins on the Friday. Chris Algieri only rehydrated like 6 or 7 pounds, I believe, when he fought Eubank. And Chris is, the most by-the-book, sports scientist you'll ever meet. That's what he does for a living outside of boxing. So he only rehydrated a certain amount, which shows that you shouldn't be putting on that much weight. So if Ben is coming down to 58 and struggling to make 58, he's then going to rehydrate a lot more. That isn't natural. You've got to start asking questions. How can you, one, get your body in that shape that you're struggling to get down to 58? And two, what weight are you going to get in the ring out of the night? You've got to ask a lot of questions about that. It's just not natural. Or there's some witch doctor out there, and now they're apparently trying to blame this doctor who comes across as a social media star. He's like he's a doctor. Whatever, that's a story for another day. But there was a rumor going around today that they're trying to blame this fight doctor, his name is, or something like that. And if that's the case, that's the case. But it doesn't take a genius to work out that he must be getting some form of added help. And I could go on about drug cheats all day, mate, because these tests don't test for certain substances. So if you're not on that banned test, on that banned list, you can put whatever you want in your body. You're saying that there are labs in Mexico that are producing all these performance-enhancing drugs that don't show up on screenings. So I'm sorry I've got a bit off topic there, but I don't think the fight should go ahead because it's just making a mockery of drug testing and the sport of boxing in general.
Assuming this never happened, Chris. Assuming this announcement wasn't made, Conor Benn didn't, this adverse finding wasn't found in his results.
Yeah.
Who do you think would have had the upper hand on Saturday? Is it Eubank because he's naturally the bigger guy?
Yeah, you'd say that. I'm more experienced as well. He's done rounds. He's done a lot of rounds at a higher level. Like I was putting I was swaying completely towards Eubank. My head says Eubank all day. Do you know what I mean? I just couldn't see past him unless he's got ridiculously old overnight. I just couldn't see past him. I'm not saying he's not the greatest boxer in the world, but neither is Benn. You know, Ben can just stand and trade. Eubank's probably gonna have, you know, he's got all the physical advantage and probably a little bit of a better defense. So I was swaying completely towards Eubank. Not for a stoppage, he would have gone to points, but he'd have won that fight.
What about you, Mike? Let me get your initial reaction to hearing the news of Conor Benn this week. What was your take on it?
I was surprised at the beginning because I was kind of like, oh man, like it's only a few days before the fight. But like Chris said, if we're being honest, you know, not just combat sports, but sports in general, full of performance enhancing drugs, you know, because when you're earning that sort of money and it's such fine lines, people are going to take, you know, something to, you know, try to win a fight or, you know, win a race or win whatever they're competing in to get to that next level because it's bigger checks. And in most sports, you know, in boxing or something like that, they'll get what, a 6-month ban. Like, let's look at Canelo. Canelo got what, a 6-month ban? The guy only fights, you know, twice a year. So taking 6 months off isn't really a ban to him. So I was surprised just due to the fact that like it's so close to the fight. And you know, the big story is if the Daily Mail hadn't have got a hold of this, would we even know? They're the ones that kind of released it to the point where Matchroom had to come out and say something, and Eddie Hearn started doing the interviews because I believe the actual test itself was back in August.
Oh wow! So I want to pose this question to both of you, since the United States doesn't really have its own like a type of British Boxing Board of Control. We don't really have that, but you guys have that over there. How much power do they really have over there? And if Eddie Hearn and Matchroom find a way to get this fight to proceed and actually put on the event, what consequences are available or could happen to someone like Eddie Hearn or Matchroom from a government agency like the British Boxing Board of Control?
Well, the British Boxing Board of Control is a sanctioning body that has full jurisdiction to pull the fight, pull the event. They cannot sanction the event. They shouldn't sanction any event if there's been a failed drug test. That fight shouldn't be sanctioned. So if they go ahead and sanction it and allow it to happen, then they're completely undermining their own credibility. They say that they put the fighter's safety first, which you go back to the incident with Michael Watson. And that's when, you know, that was a bad year for British boxing. The British Boxing Board of Control nearly went bankrupt because of that fight, because safety precautions weren't in place that could have prevented Michael Watson from, you know, being as ill as he was. And he's made an amazing recovery, and it's fantastic to see. But they have the authority to just completely say, we're not putting this fight on. As they did when David Hay fought Derek Chisora on a Luxembourg license. How Frank Warren pulled that off was a minor miracle in itself. But at the time, I believe that if you held a boxing license from a neighbouring state in the European Union under the British free trade rules and the European free trade rules, you were allowed to apply your trade if you met the board's requirements on medicals. That might not be 100% correct, but I know I'm not far off on it. So that's the loophole round it. However, it just brings no credibility to British boxing. You've got people dying in fucking boxing rings. I'm still waiting for Dillian White's B sample. Where the fuck did that ever come?
Yeah.
It's just, you know, and when he fought Povetkin and I'm not, you know, when did the B sample? Then Dillian White is a convicted drug cheat. He is. He got a 2-year ban for it. So say what you want, but he is. But then, you know, You've got, he fought Povetkin in Gibraltar, another convicted drug cheat. What do you think them two must have been on in Gibraltar, mate? You know what I mean? Come on. Like, you're just making a mockery of the sport. This is a sport that I love, that I've lost people around me through. And they don't care because all they care about is money. I think the British Boxing Board of Control at times can be very hypocritical. And if they allow this fight to happen, it's just a hypocrisy that shows that money means more than fighter safety. If that's the case, then we might as well just all pack up and admit that this business is ran corruptly.
Now, can they, as I mentioned, because Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, obviously their main business is boxing, and they put on a lot of fights in the UK, which is under the jurisdiction of the British Boxing Board of Control. If, let's just say, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom proceed with this and find a way to put this event on, is there any way that the British Boxing Board of Control can issue some type of sanctions to Matchroom as a whole, for their future fights, or is there a precedent for that?
They could withdraw the promoter's license and issue a fine, probably. They could do something, yeah.
But is it likely, though?
No. You make too much money off them.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, they won't. Robert Smith, I'll probably get in trouble for this. But Robert Smith makes up his own. It's a dictatorship over there. They just pick and choose the rules. You go down to area councils, you get some really strong area councils in the UK, and then you get some that just don't give a shit. Some of the stuff I saw in Scotland when I lived up there, Jesus Christ, it's just embarrassing. It's like white collar boxing up there. To this day, you should see the shows. They're just funny. They're so bad. Like, how people pay for tickets, to go to those shows, like, they must be taking loads of drugs at the shows, because not the fighters, I mean, the people in the attendance, like, to bear it. Like, I'd have to take loads of drugs to watch one of them shows in its entirety, because they're that boring. Like, I'd have to be really drunk and taking acid for that to seem entertaining.
Robert Smith is the head of the British Boxing Board of Control, right?
He's the general secretary for the British Boxing Board of Control. That's his title here.
How long has he been the head or the general secretary of that agency?
Since I can remember.
Yeah, a long time.
And it doesn't seem like he's going to leave that position anytime soon, right?
No, because he's one of the younger ones on the board, and he's in his late 60s probably. If you go to Charlie Giles, who was the head of the board for years, Charlie Giles is probably in his 90s now. He's late 80s. He's old as, he was around with the dinosaurs.
Mike, if you had to put a number on it as of this recording, what is the likelihood that Matchroom puts on this event on Saturday?
I think they will. I think they'll either pressurize the British Board of Boxing into doing it, or if not, they'll do like they did for the David Haye Chisora fight, and they'll get, a license from somewhere else to put the show on, because they've got that much money invested in it. The pay-per-views, all the celebrities and stuff coming over, the amount of production that they've put into it. Just to kind of like reading between the lines from, Eddie kept saying, like Chris was saying, Eddie kept saying that he essentially hasn't failed a UCAD test. He's failed a VADA test. So essentially they shouldn't really ban him, because it wasn't a UCAD, which is United Kingdom anti-doping.
Right. So the British Boxing Board of Control, do they have like a policy, a written policy that says like, oh, this is who we use in terms of adverse findings or any type of positive or negative findings? Is UCAD or is VADA or WADA listed as well?
That was just extra tests put on because Chris Eubank and Conor Benn decided they want to do that, so they paid out of pocket for that. It's like the one where, Billy Joe Saunders failed for that nasal spray. That wasn't on the list in a UCAD, but that was failed in a VADA test. And then, he was banned in Michigan, so he couldn't fight Andrade. But if that fight was going ahead in the UK, he'd have been fine. So I don't know. I don't know whether he's going to pressurize. Look at the Tyson Fury disaster, where Tyson Fury, threatened to take them to court, which essentially probably would have bankrupted them. So they were like, "Hey, Tyson, how about we just backdate that ban, and everything's good to go."
Yeah.
Wow.
All comes down to money, and they might as well just let. Do you know what? Carl Frost said something years ago when he went. You might as well just let everyone take drugs, and there was a big uproar at the time. He was right, because everyone's taking drugs anyway. You might as well just let them do it.
Like the old Pride days, when UFC first came about, before they kind of got into some type of system in there. If you watched early doors of the UFC or Pride, those guys are fucking absolutely massive. Look at like Overeem and all those guys back in the day. They were absolutely huge.
Anyone remember Ken Shamrock?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, the early days, like when he was doing the early days of the UFC, when he was fighting Dan Severn, and then he popped up in WWF at like 250, and you're like, what the fuck? He was just, he must have all been on something. Yeah, he was a monster, mate.
So, Mike, I don't think I posed this question to you. Assuming it happens on Saturday, let's just say Benn never tested positive for that substance, or let's just say it proceeds forward as of this moment. Are you favoring Eubank? I'm thinking a lot.
Yeah, I don't know, because Eubank he's fought the better opposition, more rounds. I just don't know if he has enough pop to kind of hold Eubank off, to hold Benn off, where Benn will just kind of come in, he's shorter, trying to get down, go underneath the punches, and trying to catch him kind of like he did to Chris Van Heerden, kind of catch him against the ropes or something like that. I think it's a great fight if it goes ahead, good clash of styles. I would favor Eubank, but only like 55-45, because I just don't know whether he's got that power to kind of hold Benn off, whereas I think Benn will take a few shots to try to land one. So it's an interesting matchup. And kind of going back to what we were talking about before, I read today, and I saw Chris Van Heerden posted that the only drug testing that they did for his fight against Conor Benn, there was the usual P test after the fight.
Chris, is there any similarities in this fight, if any at all, between this fight, Eubank Jr. and Benn, and Triple G and Kell Brook?
Yeah, there are similarities, but I think Golovkin at the time was a fucking monster, wasn't he? Do you know what I mean? He's that old shit joke about finding him in bed with your missus. You took him in. That was Golovkin at the time. I don't think. And Kell was a great fighter. Kell will fight again, by the way. I'm pretty sure he'll come back. But Kell was a great fighter. But Kell, I think that's how good, physically, imposing Golovkin was at the time with his power. It's probably more so than what Benn. Ben's the different, like the contrast between Benn and Eubank. There's a far bigger gap in power, I think, between Brook and Golovkin, and that was obviously, a massive part of the fight going the way it went. So, there is a size implement, obviously, a size, equation to be discussed, but I don't think it's as what's it called? Kell was a big 47-pounder as well. I don't think Benn is. So yeah, probably not as drastic, but it's right to make some comparisons. Yeah.
Chris, Eddie Hearn was estimating 1 million pay-per-view buys for this event. Do you think they can hit that?
They'll just make it up anyway. Who cares? Don't just make up their own facts anyway. I don't much pay attention to them, mate. ProBox TV's got 10 million subscribers. I just made that up. Prove it. Yeah, prove that they haven't. You know what I
But
mean?
is the interest in this fight in the UK, is it high as they're making it out to be? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of interest in it.
I think within boxing fans there is, but I don't think it's crossed over to the general public. They've tried everything. Like, being fair, like they were supposed to put something on BBC tonight, and they pulled it. They pulled the BBC have pulled it, which is, you know, quite ironic. The BBC, you know, taking the moral high ground on something, considering they covered up pedophiles for years. But that's a story for another day. You know, but you know they pulled, you know, so they were trying to cross it over to be into the mainstream. I'm not sure that they did. I'm not sure that they were able to do that. And that's not even a criticism of DAZN or Eddie Hearn. I just don't think that both fighters have got the personalities that capture the mainstream audience. However, within general sports fans and boxing fans, obviously it was big over there. General sports fans were paying an interest to it. But when you're not getting the coverage of Sky Sports, it's very, very, very hard to get the general public's interest on it. And that's when you've done your deal with DAZN, you sacrifice that.
Right.
So, you know, that's, you know, you can put someone taking a shit on Sky Sports and they'll get more viewers than most of these, you know, behind the paywall type cards like DAZN. And that's not even a criticism of the product. That's just the fucking reality. And if you don't want to believe that, then you're just fucking lying to yourself for some purpose, or you're delusional and not educated on it. We're going into a fucking times of austerity in the UK thanks to the dickhead Tory government. People don't want to pay for pay-per-view. People don't want to pay extra money to subscribe to apps. It's not like over here where we have Roku boxes and we're used to it. Do you know what I mean? You used to adding on things with cable over here. You subscribe to Showtime. You subscribe to HBO. That's not a thing in the UK still now. You just have Virgin, BT, or Skybox. That's it. And if it's not on there, then you don't watch it. And that's the culture. I'm not saying it's the product's fault. It's the culture's fault. And if you're just going to pretend that it's not happening and lie to the public, then you're only lying to yourself, really, aren't you? But if I had a Russian billionaire's money that wasn't sanctioned because he's got British citizenship, then I wouldn't give a fuck either. I'd take as much money out of it as he can and then launch my own app, which is what Matchroom will end up doing probably, because they have all their in-house production team, which is very smart to invest in that. So they can produce shows on their own. They don't even need a broadcaster, unless away from a financial standpoint. So if you go and see a Matchroom Sport app launched in a few years' time, which has the dart, the snooker, the golf, the Euro Pro Golf and boxing on, don't be surprised to see that happen.
Right.
When DAZN get bored of losing money, Canelo Bivol lost money. How the fuck can you lose money on Canelo Alvarez?
Right.
I'll tell you why, because it's not promoted into the mainstream. Because you're on a fucking app which no one has.
Yeah.
So
that seems like the corner that like somebody like DAZN is definitely trying to fight out of. But, you know, even with somebody like Canelo Alvarez, they're still kind of running into some obstacles there.
Boxing's a niche sport. Boxing's a niche sport. It's a niche. So, like, what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring football onto DAZN. If they do that, then it might work. Do you know what I mean? Because people will subscribe for football, like soccer,
right?
But football,
right?
Until you've got to have more content. You can't just do boxing on its own at that price range. ProBox TV will launch as free. Okay, free with ads, $2 a month without ads. Yeah, has it got the championship start? You know, it's not going to have the high level championship boxing like Benn Eubank on it, but that's a price that people can pay. They tried it with this Fight Zone in the UK. Sorry to go on about this, but it's something I'm very passionate about.
Keep going.
But they had something called Fight Zone in the UK, but that was run by complete Muppets. and they didn't have regular content. They didn't have Roy Jones doing podcasts, Paulie Malignaggi doing talk shows, and all the additional content that you get with it. They had, the legend Lewis Van Pucci fighting in 4 rounders. That was their undercards. So, and they were doing one show a month, not going to work, is it? You're going to have regular content. ProBox TV right now did 3 shows last month. You know what I mean? So in Mexico, I'm doing some okay shows. Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Florida. So, it's the price point's right. It's less than a cup of coffee. But then it's it was $1.99 a month, but now it's $17.99 a month, and then you've got to pay an extra £50 for pay-per-view or £25 for pay-per-view. Nah, I couldn't even be bothered signing up. I don't have the zone. I just can't be bothered giving them my details. I don't want people at the zone know where I live. But on a serious note, I haven't got the zone. Because generally I'm not paying. If I'm going to pay £20 a month, then I'm not going to pay an extra £50 to watch. I don't know what it is in the UK, or $50 or whatever it will be to watch Benn Eubank. I just won't.
Right. No, yeah. That sentiment is definitely felt amongst many boxing fans, so we can definitely understand. Moving on to this side of the United States, over here in California, from the Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, and in the Los Angeles area, on Showtime for the WBC interim super welterweight title. The towering Inferno returns. Sebastian Fundora, 19-0-1, goes up against Carlos Ocampo, 34-1. What do you think about this matchup, Chris?
Well matched fight. Expect nothing less from Tom Brown. Those good people over there. He's only coming off one loss. But he did get drilled by Errol Spence, Ocampo. Probably the right fight for Fundora at this stage to make him continue to look good and look like a monster. And he has one of the greatest boxing minds in Samson Luksovic. That's his his manager, promoter. Fundora's going on to, he could be a star. I met him at the Hall of Fame. He was a lovely, lovely young man. So he's got a what's it called? He's got a big future ahead of him. So it's the right fight for him. And to continue his rise up the ranks. And he is probably one of the next best 154 pounders in weighting when Charlo moves up. So it'll be a fun fight. Mexicans, Ocampo is gonna bring it, but I expect Fundora to look good.
What do you think, Mike? What do you think about this matchup?
Good matchup. Matchup I expect, Fundora to win. He's just a monster at the minute. Someone who's definitely broken out over the last 18 months or so, and I can think he's going to continue to do it. He doesn't seem like one of those guys that's going to be, kind of led astray away from the ring. He seems like he's just going to knuckle down, and we're going to see him in some good fights. Look at the last couple of fights that he's had. He's just so different to watch, because he's so tall. You think he's going to use his jab from the outside and, really just box you and run circles around you, but he doesn't. He fights more on the inside, which is which is different. He doesn't use, his genetic gifts that he has, but because he doesn't, he's super exciting to watch.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a treat to watch somebody like that with that length and that height to fight on the inside like that. It's definitely interesting. Also on the card, Carlos Adames, 21-1, goes up against Juan Macias Montiel. This is for the WBC interim middleweight title. And also Fernando Daniel Martinez, 14-0, goes up against Jerwin Ancajas, 33-2-2. This is for the IBF super flyweight title. Is there any way, Chris, do you think in terms of Ancajas, is there any way we could see him fight any of the guys that are pretty much the four kings of the super flyweight division at the moment, or him being associated with PBC? Is that an obstacle?
Not really. He's Sean Gibbons' guy. So Sean can make it happen. Sean's the right man to make that happen. Sean has great relationships with everybody. One of the smartest men in boxing, Sean Gibbons. So he can make. He's a Manny Pacquiao promotions fighter. He's not a PB. He has an association with PBC, but he's not their guy. I don't think they probably got some futures on him, but I don't think that. I think that could happen. In the future. And Ancaras is an amazing fighter, and Fernando Martinez, he's still got to win that fight. So I think that's a great fight. Adames against Montiel is a good fight because they're at the same level. Adames is best win Sergey Derevinchenko. We think he got Sergey on a bit of an off night. But that's a great little middleweight fight. I'm really excited for that fight. I'm really excited for Martinez and Ancaras. And you'd like to think that the winner of that fight could move on to fight. You'd love to see them fight the likes of your Cuadras and Chocolatito and those type of fighters. Bam.
Bam, yeah.
Bam's a star, and he's what would you rather fight? Would you rather fight on Showtime to millions and millions of homes, or I guess Canelo's took a liking to the kid, so if he features on Canelo undercards, that's not a bad thing for him. But you'd like to see the winner of Martinez and Ancaras in with one of those fighters. And another great fight on that card as well is the Lithuanian chap. They call him Meme Machine. I'm not going to even try and pronounce his name.
Oh, yeah.
Against Michael Fox. That's Michael Fox. That's a good fight.
Yeah, that is a good fight. I don't think we had that listed. Mean Machine definitely knows how to fight and definitely brings some competitiveness to his fight.
Yeah.
I'm definitely that's a good shout. Good mention right there.
Yeah.
Moving on, news and notes of this week's episode of The Last Round. Chris, we've been hearing for a couple weeks about reported talks between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua for some type of December bout. Are they just playing with us? Are we really going to see this fight in December, or are we going to see it next year, or what are they doing here?
I don't think we see that this year. I don't think we see that this year because it's it's not that fight sells one way or another, but I don't know if everyone in all parties want that fight. The fighters want that fight, absolutely, but certain broadcasters, certain promoters want that fight. No way, because they're not making the money. Anthony Joshua could take a shit in Saudi Arabia, and you're probably getting a site fee and rights fees of money that is astronomical. Why would Eddie Hearn give that up to Frank Warren? Come on.
That's true.
Am I taught just comes down to money again, and I may be crushing some. If there's 15-year-olds out there who are listening to this, they're probably going to think I'm crushing their dreams. Kids, I'm sorry. Nobody gives a fuck about doing the right thing in this business. It's about money. I've tried to do the right thing my whole life in boxing, and what goes around comes around. I'm in a wonderful position now because I believe I stuck by my guns and did the right thing. But the reason people come and go in this business is because they just want to make money. And if you do the right thing, but there's a glass ceiling you'll never get through. I know I'm never getting through that glass ceiling. But it is what it is. It all comes down to money. That fight don't happen because it doesn't favor, because people are too greedy. And when you're talking, life, money that's, either earning $10 million or earning $50 million, I won't want the fight to fucking happen. Do you know what I mean? These people don't care about British boxing, about world boxing. They care about what financial implication it has on them, and that's that.
Mike,
the fight doesn't happen.
Right.
Sorry.
Do you agree with that, Mike? It doesn't happen in December at least?
No, after what they said, I think it all started off with, Tyson Fury just doing his usual Instagram call out. And then he got a reply. And then they kind of carried it on, and they didn't really expect it to go anywhere. And then the ball started rolling. Joshua said yes. And then, there was probably some kind of contract sent. And then, they were kind of like trying to call Tyson's bluff. And they were just like, yeah, we'll take the fight. Yeah, we'll take 60-40. Yeah, we'll take December the 3rd. And then, it started getting closer and closer. And yeah, I don't know exactly, which party didn't exactly want it, but I would probably lean towards Eddie Hearn because I think Tyson Fury goes in as a huge favorite in that fight. And do they really want, AJ to come off another defeat? He just lost to Usyk twice and then go in and fight Fury. I imagine that would be a 2-fight deal. He, in my opinion, he loses both. He's then 4 losses on the bounce. There goes his cash cow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. But going straight into a Fury fight, got to give him credit for that, at least, even if he is the underdog against somebody like Tyson Fury. Also, former WBC junior featherweight champion Brandon Figueroa was arrested in the state of Texas on suspicion of a DWI. So another boxer arrested, makes the world. I mean, athletes, it happens to athletes in any sport, but obviously we see it.
Well, that's both brothers. They've both been WBC champ and they've both got DUIs.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. That is true. They might as well be twins, but they're right there. And then also Joe Cordina, his junior lightweight title defense against Shavkat Rakimov, which was scheduled for November 5th in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, is off after Cordina suffered a hand injury that will require some type of surgical procedure. And I believe the IBF actually stripped him of his title as well. Chris, what do you think about something like that? What do you think about the IBF actually stripping him of his title after he just won it a couple months ago?
Yeah, I feel for the kid. You know what I mean? He's worked very hard to become world champion, and I feel for the kid. I really do. But the IBF are very strict. They're probably the strictest of all the sanctioning bodies. Whether you agree or not, at least they do try and implement the law or their laws, whatever, what they think the right things to do in professional boxing are. So I do have a lot of respect for what the IBF do, but I feel for Joe Cordina? Absolutely. I'm gutted for the kid, and hopefully he can come back from this and become world champion again, because he's a fantastic talent. And how he won the world title, that was amazing. And, I really feel for Joe Cordina. I really do.
What do you think, Mike? What do you think about the IBF stripping him after his hand injury?
I thought it was, super strict until you actually heard that the only reason he got that fight was a Gower was due to the fact he got Rakimov to step aside, and then the IBF said, well, okay, you can do that, but you have to fight Rakimov next within a certain time period. Due to the injury, they can't stick to the time period, but the IBF at least have said, okay, when you come back, the winner of, Rakimov against whoever, you will get a rematch essentially to, try to win the IBF, world title back, which is, that's good enough if it's all in, set in stone. If you got to think about Rakimov, what's he going to do? Just sit and wait? It's a short career. So at least with the IBF, they do stick to it, whether sometimes you don't get it as good a fight. But if you are that fighter, at least you are sticking to the rules. Whereas, look at the stuff that WBA do. Leo Santa Cruz has defended that, that WBA world title for 2 or 3 years. Imagine being in that division and being high up in the WBA. You're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think that's the best scenario involved for everybody involved, including Rakimov and Cordina and the IBF. I think, if Cordina gets healthy, comes back, gets a shot right back at the IBF title they stripped them of. I mean, what else could you ask for? That's the best case scenario. And then some unfortunate news, obviously, to share here in the sport of boxing. Junior welterweight Luis Quinones died on last Thursday night, actually, 5 days after being hospitalized following a knockout loss to Jose Munoz in the country of Colombia. Luis Quinones was 25 years old. We touched about it a little bit earlier in this episode, Chris, when we were talking about Benn, Eubank, and injuries and passings in the sport. Unfortunately, we have another one here. What's something that you touched on it a little bit in terms of injuries and unfortunate deaths in the ring, but when you hear of a passing like this of another fighter within that squared circle, what crosses your mind?
It's so sad. Firstly, no one, it's hard to even put into words. The fact that people are passing away in the boxing ring. It's just fucking heartbreaking. And I'm obviously the person who the lad fought probably is absolutely devastated. But it puts into when you talk about drug cheats and stuff like that, it's just regulations within boxing. It just brings more into safety is still a problem in boxing, and it just highlights those concerns that people need to that need to be addressed. And as we touched on it, and that's I'd describe it as briefly touching on it before we could write books on the issues with the need for regulation within professional boxing. These incidences just highlight how important those arguments are. So, rest in peace to I won't try and pronounce his second name. Spanish is terrible, but rest in peace to the young man, and thoughts with his family.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. We definitely send our thoughts to Luis Quinones' family and friends. Always difficult to hear of any death, but especially as us who are a part of this crazy world we call boxing. It's never good to hear of somebody passing away, especially within those ropes. Chris, we definitely appreciate it. We know you're on the East Coast, so you're a couple hours ahead of us over here on the West Coast, so you're staying up a little late, but we definitely appreciate you jumping on here on the last round for this week's episode. Obviously, you mentioned ProBox TV, your association with them. Anything else you have that you want to promote, go ahead and do it. The floor is yours.
God, that's giving me a mic. Thank God you can edit this. ProBox TV, obviously, it's my bread and butter where I work. My boss, Gary Jonas, and obviously the founding members, who work with Roy Jones and Paulie Malignaggi, a very good friend of mine, Juan Manuel Marquez, and Antonio Tava. It's great to, it's amazing, just to be around them and work with them, and all the way over to the production staff that we have from Rich Gorn, who's been Showtime for years. We have Lee Simons, who was with HBO for years, so just to be able to work around these people, it's a blessing, isn't it? Gary Jonas as well. He's a student of boxing. He studies boxing, but he's an incredibly successful businessman. So I'm getting a great education in boxing, and still maintaining great relationships with the likes of Top Rank. Friendly with their hierarchy, and we get on well. So life's good on that. Boxer, and you can me and Ben Shalom go back a long time. Me and Ben broke in the business together at the same time, and I worked for both Boxer in the early days, and now to be back doing all that with Ben over in the UK is great, because I care about you British boxing, and I want to see British boxing thrive, and I believe it will for the years to come on Sky Sports. So life's good. Life's really good at the moment, and then hopefully I can get back. I'd like to have another little, some more fights. I still feel like I've, I'm just learning this sport every day. Every day's a school day, mate. So it'd be nice to go and have a few more fights. Whether they will do or don't, we'll see. But I'd like to. So I've been known for putting up some bold predictions over the years, but I've always pulled through on them. So if people want to call me a gobshite, that's up to them. But they call it me, and I don't even know who the fuck they are. So you know what I mean. So I don't really care. Unless it's people care about. I don't really care about people's opinions. But no, life's good at my end, and Pro Box TV. I think that's the concept's the future of boxing, and then and it makes boxing accessible to the working classes. This is a working class sport, and that's what I'm very happy to be a part of that. Oh yeah, life's good, and then if you want to follow, I don't really tweet that much anymore. I mean, I do a bit of Instagramming, but if you want to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, it's Glover's Stories. His second name being Glover, and I always go on about having no sad stories because I don't, no sad stories in it. We don't do them. Just get on with it. But no, always good. And for what it's worth, if I can promote anything, I'd always promote the awareness for ALS and motor neuron disease. Something very close to my heart. So, if I get any platform, I'd always want to promote that. And the fact that for men especially, it's okay to talk. Please, too many young lads kill it. I know this is a bit deep for this type of platform, but there's so many.
It's all right. Keep going.
There's so many young people passing away at the moment because they just couldn't talk about their problems. Phone your mates, check in on your mates, and make sure they're okay. Because especially men, it's okay to talk, isn't it? And say, look, I'm having a bad time. Can I have a chat with, can we just sit down and have a chat, go and have a coffee with someone? I lost my mum 2 months ago. So, without my friends, fuck knows my head would have fallen off. I'm Pro Box TV. Everyone I worked with in boxing stood by me and backed me and gave me space when I needed me space and kept me focused when I needed focusing in the last 2 months. So it's been a rough 2 months, but thank God I've got good people around me. Up the fucking toffees.
Absolutely.
So, Chris, one thing I was wondering is, what did you take delivery of during this podcast? Was that a Mackey's?
Absolutely. I've got a triple cheeseburger. I had a strawberry shake, 13 cookies. I don't know why they come in number 13. It's a bit devil-like, isn't it? I don't know why. It's the Satanist McDonald's owners, and 2 large Coca-Colas.
Man, all for you?
Yeah. I lost a lot of weight. I had COVID as well. So I lost a lot of weight. So I'm putting it back on now. I've got my appetite back again for the first time in a few months. So yeah, but just getting stuck in now to this Mackey's. And I like me pro wrestling. I watch me pro wrestling and go back to sleep.
Chris, you split your time between New York and Florida. Give us a few guys that we should be looking out for. Now you've got your ear to the ground.
Absolutely. In Florida, there's a kid called Najee Lopez, kid out of Atlanta, coming up through Florida. This kid's the truth. Like, this kid's the truth. There's 2 young brothers called the Valle brothers in Tampa. Them kids are special. Like, they both model, but they can all fight like fuck. Like I say, like the young, there's one at super feather and one at light middle. The super feather one reminds me of Santa Cruz. The light middle reminds me of Antonio Margarito. But doesn't need the hand drops. They're both great to watch, both on Pro Box TV. And there's some good kids. There's some great kids coming up in New York, but none bigger and better than the likes of Shushu Carrington. Bruce Shushu. I think Shushu. I saw Shushu as an amateur, and he's an outstanding talent. And he's going to go from strength to strength. I think as a pro, little Jahar Tucker, he's got so much talent, that kid. Over in Long Island, and I think he's from West Babylon in Long Island. That kid's got so much talent. So that's they're me 2, picks are and out of New York. They're gonna come on to the bigger and better things. And you've got my kid as well, Cesar Francis. He fights Friday night, so I don't know, Friday at this time I'm recording, and he's going to look to be in a big fight. end of this year, early next year. You know, he's number 9 in the WBO. When he came on board with me in Pro Box, took him from obscurity to number 9 in the world, and he'll probably go top 5 in the world if he wins, if he beats Francisco Armenta on Friday night. So he beat Ray Beltran in his 10th pro fight. What does that tell you? So there's a little hidden gem for you. And then at home, Adam Azim, mate. Adam Azim, that kid's the fucking future. Adam Azim is an absolute star. That's a fighter to watch in the UK from anyone in the world. Adam Azim, what a fighter he is, mate. He's a star.
You managed to get yourself to any bare knuckle whilst you've been in Florida?
Yeah, I just started laughing. I thought it was really funny. None of them can fight. Just all fucking idiots. I started laughing at them. I sat there just honestly. One Paulie Malignaggi, and I just sat there just laughing. What the fuck is this nonsense? It's all nonsense. It's not a real sport. Sorry for being so blunt. It's not a real sport. It's just a fucking load of idiots who've got nothing between their ears and think they'll punch fuck out themselves. It's stupid. It's barbaric. It's not sport. It's stupid. I don't appreciate it. There's a time and a place for it, but it's not on mainstream television. It's a fad. It will die its death at some point. It's got no longevity.
Tell us how you really feel, Chris.
That was me being nice. That was me being nice. I could have said a lot worse, trust me. But I could get into fucking the personnel involved in it. The business people are obviously smart because they're making money. But I've been to the bare knuckle. There's no skill. I love boxing for the skill. Skill to the sport. It's a sweet science. I think there's problems in society, and I'm a quite political person, sociological person. I'm quite deep. And I think that a lot of bare knuckle FC and that type of stuff, and fair play to the people who do it. You're obviously fucking brain dead for doing it. But fair play to you. You've got balls. I respect that for getting in the ring. Would I do it? Pay me enough, I'd do it because it's fucking easy. Because they don't know how to fight. None of them have got any idea how to fight. It's just all, maybe I saw a bad show, who knows? But I went once, so I just bet. Me and one of my other fighters, Danny, just sat there laughing, like how bad it was. Do you know what I mean? It was like watching a fight outside of a pub. And it encourages that lifestyle of I'm the hard man. No, you're fucking not. Sit down. They're not making life-changing money, are they? But they act like they are, and they act like they're all celebrities, and contribute to this narcissistic generation that we live in. It's just another problem with it. It's like the Floyd Mayweather effect on boxing. It's doing the same things. Everyone's scared to lose the road because of Floyd fucking Mayweather. He's bred a generation of narcissists that think that Instagram means more than how much money they've got in the bank. And bare knuckle plays into that narcissistic generation. It's not for me. It's just not for me. Everything about it I don't like.
Yeah, we get it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think I made my point there, didn't I? So I just think it's bizarre, mate. It just makes no sense at all to me.
Well, on that note, Mike, once again, as we cross the finish line here, go ahead and let our listeners know where they can find us and follow us.
We are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing. We've got Deontay Wilder, Helenius, Marshall Shields, Bumgardner, Mayer, and also Kambosos, Devin Haney. And that was all from memory.
All right. It's probably the longest list you've done from memory since we started this show. So definitely big congratulations to you. And big thanks once again to Chris Glover of Pro Box TV. I'm sure he'll be back on again very soon. So for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round